Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're completely bypassing your typical everyday garden varieties and diving straight into the absolute strangest, most exotic, and frankly, most bizarre plants on the planet. We're drawing from a really fascinating botanical showcase to bring you face-to-face with nature's ultimate outliers. So get ready, because the plant kingdom, it's way more dramatic than you might think. Let's kick things off with a bit of a mystery, all right? Just imagine you're trekking through the incredibly dense, humid rainforests of Southeast Asia, and you stumble upon this massive botanical behemoth. What plant produces a bloom so huge, it literally looks like a small alien spacecraft, and unleashes a stench that smells exactly like rotting flesh? I know, it sounds like a prop straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it is entirely real. That brings us right into our first group of plants, the sheer monsters of the rainforest, nature's true Goliaths. When you're trying to survive in a hyper-competitive jungle, you kind of have to throw subtlety right out the window. The answer to our mystery is the Rafflesia arnoldii, or as it's often called, the corpse flower. This thing is essentially a botanical vampire. It's a parasitic plant that spends almost its entire life completely invisible, just sapping nutrients from inside rainforest vines. It only bursts out to create a spectacular meter-wide bloom. And that awful rotting meat scent, it's actually a highly evolved deceptive strategy to trick carrion flies into pollinating it. 10 feet. Think about that for a second. That is the record-breaking height of our next rainforest monster, the Titan Arum. Now, much like the corpse flower, it uses a foul, really pungent odor of decaying meat to attract pollinators. But what makes a Titan Arum so unbelievable is the sheer biological cost of what it does. It spends up to half a decade, 5 whole years, just hoarding energy to produce a massive floral display that lasts a measly 2 days before completely collapsing. It's an incredibly spectacular, high-stakes gamble. And speaking of wild extremes, how about 176 pounds? That is the staggering amount of weight a single leaf from the Victoria boliviana giant water lily can actually support out in the wild. Long mistaken for a completely different species, this aquatic behemoth has leaves that stretch nearly 10 feet wide. They stay afloat thanks to this intricate, spongy framework of veins, which are perfectly armored with sharp spines underneath to keep hungry fish away. It is an absolute masterclass in natural engineering. Moving on from sheer size, we're stepping into the world of illusions and theatrics. These are the absolute masters of botanical deception. So if you can't overpower your environment with size, what do? Well, you outsmart it with trickery. Think about what a male bee is looking for, a female bee and a nice nectar feast. Enter the bee orchid. This remarkable plant creates a highly intricate physical illusion of a female bee's abdomen. It literally tricks the male bee into landing and attempting to mate, and while he's busy figuring things out, he unwittingly picks up pollen. There's no nectar, there's no mate, it's pure deception. And ironically, in regions where its specific bee doesn't even exist, this clever little orchid just adapts and pollinates itself. But hey, deception isn't just about appearances, right? It extends to movement too. Meet the dancing plant. When the temperature hits 72 degrees Fahrenheit, this tropical shrub literally starts to dance. It rapidly swivels its lateral leaflets around to dynamically track the sun for optimal photosynthesis. But the defensive trick here is just brilliant. These rapid movements mimic fluttering butterflies, which actually deters real butterflies from laying their eggs on the leaves. It's like nature's own Morse code, and it even captivated Charles Darwin way back in 1880. Now, to really appreciate our next master of disguise, we have to talk about epiphytes. Basically, an epiphyte is a plant that doesn't need soil at all. It just clings to tree bark in wet rainforests and pulls moisture straight out of the human air. The Dracula orchid, which literally translates to little dragon, is a perfect example of this. Hiding out in the shadowy canopies, it relies on a brilliant disguise. It creates flowers that mimic the exact smell of damp mushrooms to lure in specific fruit flies to do its pollinating. Okay, let's shift gears completely and look at our ancient living fossils, the true survivors of deep time. These are botanical relics that have quite literally outlasted geological epochs. There's really no better term for them than a Lazarus taxon. These are plants that science totally wrote off as extinct, only to have them miraculously reappear. The prime example? The Wollemi pine. Tucked away in Australia's Blue Mountains, this evergreen giant was thought to be extinct for 2 million years, until someone just stumbled upon it in 1994. Today, fewer than 100 of these remain in the wild, holding on as living windows right back to the era of the dinosaurs. To really grasp the staggering scale of their survival, just look at this timeline.
200 million years ago, the lineage of the baobab tree begins. This is way before the continents even drifted apart. Jump forward to 2 million years ago, and the woolly pine seemingly vanishes from the fossil record. And then 2,000 years ago, right when the Roman Empire was at its absolute peak, a single welwitschia seed sprouted in the unbelievably harsh Namib Desert. Amazingly, that exact same plant is still alive today.
That ancient sprout is the Welwitschia mirabilis, and honestly, it looks like an organism that crash-landed in the desert. It thrives on less than 100 millimeters of rainfall a year. But the most mind-blowing part, aside from 2 tiny temporary seed leaves when it starts, it only ever produces 2 true leaves for its entire lifespan. Those 2 broad leaves just keep continuously growing out from the base for millennia, getting all frayed and tangled up by the brutal desert winds over the centuries.
Jumping way back to the dawn of our deep time timeline, we have the iconic African baobab. This is a true keystone species whose lineage actually predates the splitting of the continents. These massive trees act as giant living water reservoirs out in the savanna, with trunks that can reach up to 50 meters in girth. They put on this rapid night-blooming floral show with white flowers, and they produce a highly unique fruit that actually dehydrates naturally while it's still attached to the branch. It's a really profound symbol of endurance.
Next up, we pivot to something a little more delicate, the fragile, elusive beauties that make up nature's ephemeral wonders. You know, sometimes the most remarkable adaptations are actually the most fleeting. While your typical garden flowers will bloom reliably for weeks under the bright sun, the Kudupa flower totally flips the script. Known as the Queen of the Night, this sprawling cactus native to the Americas only blossoms in moonlit darkness. It fills the night air with an incredibly sweet scent, and then it completely withers and dies by dawn's first light. Getting to witness it is a magical, once-in-a-lifetime event. Equally elusive is the Ghost Orchid. I want you to imagine a flower with absolutely 0 leaves. This botanical diva lurks in the incredibly humid swamps of Florida, relying entirely on specialized photosynthetic roots that camouflage perfectly against the tree bark. It demands pristine water and exacting humidity, and it just hangs there in the air like a spectral gem, rewarding only the most patient and, honestly, lucky observers. Just 2, that is the grand total of known locations in the entire world where the middle mist red still survives today. It is extreme rarity in physical form. Despite its name, it's actually a deep pink flower originally hailing from China. Today, it only exists in a single botanical garden down in New Zealand and at the historic Chiswick House in England, where it miraculously managed to survive the bombings of World War II. It's a species that is quite literally hanging on by a thread. And really, that extreme rarity brings us to our final critical point: protecting our botanical heritage, because so much of this beauty is teetering right on the brink. Take wood cycad, for example. The story here is just tragically ironic. Discovered in 1895, this towering prehistoric marvel is now completely extinct in the wild. But the true tragedy? Every single specimen alive today is a male clone propagated from that one original plant. Without a female counterpart, natural reproduction is just an impossible dream. It's a striking, sobering reminder of how easily an ancient genetic line can be permanently severed. And it's not just the ancient or delicate plants. Even botanical apex predators are vulnerable. The Nepenthes ettenboroughi is a carnivorous pitcher plant with traps up to 30 centimeters tall. That is large enough to digest small mammals like shrews. Named after Sir David Attenborough himself, you'd think this thing was invincible. Yet it is critically endangered. Because it's restricted solely to Mount Victoria in Palawan, the looming threats of poaching and habitat loss have pushed this majestic predator right to the edge. Finally, let's look at the jade vine of the Philippines, which is famous for its absolutely stunning, cascading turquoise blooms. But this plant doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has co-evolved a highly specific relationship with nocturnal bats, which literally hang upside down to drink its nectar, pollinating it while they do. So as deforestation ravages the Philippine rainforests, we aren't just losing a beautiful vine, we are severing an intricate, life-sustaining relationship between a specialized species and its only pollinator. All of this really brings us to the core takeaway from our source material today. These bizarre, unusual plants aren't just fun curiosities. They are profound reminders of nature's enduring strength and sheer adaptability, from leaves that dance to survivors in the deepest deserts. Yet, their precarious status loudly underscores the incredibly delicate balance of our ecosystems. So, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. We've explored the bizarre, the massive, the ancient, and the incredibly fragile today. But as these botanical wonders face unprecedented threats from habitat loss, climate change, and poaching, what role will we play? Will these plants remain living wonders, or will they simply fade back into the fossil record? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and I really hope it leaves you with a renewed sense of awe for the strange and beautiful world of plants all around us.